Hi, everyone. So welcome to this Eight Above New Platforms webinar. And we're really excited. And we've been planning this for months, to be honest. Actually, I think we talked about it in December, maybe November. And so it's been 5 months to get this together. So we're very excited. And I want to welcome all of you. I want to just briefly introduce Sarah Moses, who from Together Films, who has kindly offered to co-moderate with me. And then we have the CEO of Eventive, Iddo Patt. We have the CEO of Kinema, Christie Marchese. We have the CEO of Gathr, Scott Glosserman, and we have the CEO of Jolt, Tara Hein-Phillips. And you guys can have already read their extensive bios in the Eventive, so I'm not going to go into that much. Just a couple of ground rules. So please don't promote your films in the chat because it just takes up a lot of time in the chat. We're going to be talking for about 60 minutes, and then we'll have hopefully a half hour of Q&A, unless, maybe we'll start doing the Q&A a little bit sooner. We have already seen some of the questions that came in through Eventbrite, so we've actually already incorporated some of those questions into the questions that we're going to be asking. Just be respectful in the chat, please. Appreciate it. Then I think, the other thing is that we have prepared a very extensive comparison grid for all four of these platforms, which will be distributed next week when we distribute the recording to everyone who signed up for the webinar. So we're not going to get into the very nitty-gritty specifics of like how much is the ticket charge and what is your credit card fee and how much do you charge per film and do you charge per film, and all those things are in the grid. So what we want to do is keep this much more strategic and much more at a bigger bird's eye level, and we'll grind into some specifics, but just generally it will be a higher level discussion than the specifics, which you'll be able to see next week. And without further ado, I'm just going to kick it off with our first question, which is, what is unique about your platform? What's your unique selling proposition? How are you different from these other three platforms? And I'm going to start with Iddo this time.
Thank you, John, and thank you so much for hosting this event, and Sarah for joining in to moderate, and all of the other folks, Tara, Christie, and Scott, for joining in. I'm really excited about this discussion and thrilled to see so many folks in the audience to talk. So really looking forward to a great conversation. We at Eventive created our platform originally to work with film festivals and originally for film festival ticketing, but in the sort of initial germ of the idea was making independent film experiences and independent films more and more accessible to more and more people. And so while we started initially as a ticketing platform with all kinds of tools and rules to help festivals and then independent cinemas create access for folks, with the pandemic in 2020, we added streaming to our platform initially for festivals and other organizations to use. And filmmakers almost immediately approached us and said, well, can we use this for our streaming as well? And so we made the platform as it was available for filmmakers kind of on a trial basis in 2021, and have gradually developed that. The key differentiators of our platform, and I think it just has to do with our roots and sort of where we've come from, is number one, everything is oriented around audience experience and audience accessibility. So that's sort of maximizing features for ease of use and accessibility for audiences, and also conversions. So you're gonna be able to access screenings through both browser and OTT apps. And then customizability for event organizers, which in this case we're talking about filmmakers as well. So being able to create lots of different screenings with partners, being able to integrate live Q&A events and screenings along with VOD content and trying to make it really, really as easy to use as possible. And then the other thing that has developed over the years is we have developed a huge audience base of well over 3 million now folks who have attended independent film experiences, again, mostly through festivals. And being able to sort of use, as we've talked about, the data that's generated from the kinds of films that folks are seeing to help market and grow audiences for new films and new experiences. I could go on, but I'm gonna keep it to that. Thank you. Back to you, Jon.
Okay, Christie.
Okay. Hello, hi, I'm Christie. I'm the founder and CEO of Kinema, and Kinema is a global screening and streaming platform for independent film creators and their audiences. So we enable filmmakers to monetize and distribute their films without relinquishing their rights or becoming platform dependent while enabling to own their audience. I'd say there's probably four things that might differentiate us. We overlap in many ways with the amazing companies here. First, we'll always be focused entirely on storytelling. We want to stay in film and TV, short film, series, but always around video storytelling. Second, our technology, our team are entirely in-house. We wanted to keep it in-house as much as possible, so we didn't also become platform dependent on other outside companies. Number three, we're really focused on driving community and engagement. I come from impact producing, so just kind of naturally where we lean. That's how I know Sarah. We've done some great campaigns together over the last decade plus. So really focusing and helping filmmakers understand community, how to build it, how to reach them, and drive impact and engagement. And the last bit is doing kind of industry capacity building, kind of similar to what Iddo was just talking about. We're building up this great network of people who go to movies, who commune in person, who watch things together, we see what their interest areas are. And as more films come on the platform, we can retarget the audiences that go see their films to the next films. So it's a storytelling, technology, community, and capacity building.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Christie. Scott?
Hi, I'm Scott Glosserman. I'm founder CEO of Gathr, and I really appreciate you putting this together, Jon, and hello, everyone. We are a full suite of services that have effectively addressed what we call a direct-to-audience window. And first and foremost, we're a tech company, tech platform. We're not a distributor. We don't acquire rights. And we are B2B to C, which means we're a business-to-business company, and finally the consumer, meaning we are a private label or a white label we're like an engine that powers your film, and you go out to your audience, or you can leverage us to go out to your audience. But we are not a consumer platform. So we're not a destination to browse titles to register for and sign in. We're like the engine for your Formula One race car. But from 90,000 feet, we started by addressing issues in theatrical distribution. We created democratized bottom-up theatrical, something called theatrical on demand, which was like a Kickstarter-like mechanism for aggregating critical masses of theatrical audiences. We then branched out into non-theatrical, which is global community screenings, and have most recently partnered with Artini Pro, which I'll get into in a second. I think they're in here somewhere, to access places in far-flung areas that will ban certain web browsers. So that's a really interesting development. During COVID, we got into virtual event cinema, not to be confused with what our industry termed virtual theatrical, which was an ability for single individuals to watch at their leisure online and then to get together at a certain standpoint on Zoom and view something, but in fact, a live online synchronized screening that forces a page load refresh for everyone behind a transactional paywall that cuts to a live Q&A. And we added talent booking especially for documentary filmmakers or subject matter experts. This consolidates the screening host's ability to host a screening and then book their post-panel discussions and Q&A. And then more recently, we've added transactional video on demand and something called partner transactional video on demand. So to private label your own direct-to-audience TVOD.
Right. And last but certainly not least, Tara from Jolt.
Thank you, and thanks, everybody. Great to be here with this incredible panel. And I want to just say how many friends we see that we all have in the chat as well. So thank you for coming out for all of us. And I think except for Scott, I've worked with everybody in this group. So when we come later to like how collaborative we are, like Christie and I were on the phone for an hour the other day, and Iddo once saved our skin in a way that I will not discuss in this webinar. Anyway, Jolt's purpose more than anything else is to really challenge. We really want to challenge the way that films are distributed. We want to create a new industry standard by allowing filmmakers to retain their rights, retain the way that they want to get their films to audiences. But what we're trying to do is really help them to find those audiences in a variety of ways. To do that, we've built what we're calling an interest delivery network, which is essentially a data stack that has advanced data analytics and machine learning that helps us identify the likely audiences that are going to want to watch those films. We then put a marketing plan against that. We go out and we help to find those audiences, and we bring those audiences to the film. So in the simplest terms, that's what we're doing. The filmmaker retains all their rights, and we do a revenue share with the filmmakers. In order to find audiences, and we're only a year old, so we're still learning quite a lot, but in order to find audiences, we've really needed to think about the entire life cycle of the film. So in many ways, we've ended up stepping in as a kind of proxy distributor without taking rights, but we are also helping to do things like facilitate Academy screenings so that we can actually digitally show the film without disqualifying it, or setting up, a digital version of whatever's happening on the impact side to make sure that, it isn't just 30 people in a room. If that list had 10,000 people, we want all 10,000 of those watching the film. And creating, kind of like what Scott said, we're creating these proxy pages for those organizations and individuals, influencers, so that they can bring the film out and say what they want about the film and why they're supporting it, while it's still all in our data ecosystem, so that we're learning all the way along what kind of people are actually watching this film and how do we go find more of them. And so it's quite a broad set of things that we're doing as tactics, but what's at the heart of all of those is the richness of our data. We have probably close to a 500 million data points that feed our machine learning, and it's getting better all the time. And that also helps us to think about the marketing and, what marketing is going to be the most effective at getting your film to audiences.
Right. All right.
Amazing.
Sarah, you're
Thanks
on.
so much for that download. So I've had the pleasure of working with each of these platforms in different ways. They're also our filmmakers. So for those who don't know, Together Films, we're both a sales agency and an impact kind of marketing firm. And so each of our filmmakers in different ways have used all these platforms in the last year. So we know all the different features intimately. But I'd love to hear from you all. What do you believe is the best kind of film for your platform? Is there a particular genre that works best, a format that works best? I know that some of you have been experimenting with formats recently. And also what kind of team makeup you like to work with. So some people might be coming to you are distributors, some are sales agents, some are individual directors. So what's the kind of films that are performing best, and what's the kind of film teams or team rights holding teams that are kind of best to collaborate in the way that you operate? You have different operating structures. And I'll start on that one with Christie.
Sure. We're open to all films. So we accept all types of films from horror to comedy. But time and time again, the films that perform best are documentaries. Your 90-minute to 2-hour social issue documentary. I think part of that is because the core of what we do are screening tours. And in order for someone to host a screening, they have to be passionate about it. We would call it human-centered distribution. We're not just plugging into spaces. We have a passionate individual who's galvanizing around that film. And that typically is someone who's passionate about the topic in the film or that issue. So those, I'd say all of our top performing films, like more than 50% of our films on the platform, all are the social impact documentary films. And the teams that work best, and so the main thing is the independent entrepreneurial filmmaker. The filmmaker who's running, whether it's the director or the producer, they're running their film as a business and really building a strong strategy around their release. Having a support person on the team is also a big differentiator. It could be an impact producer, an outreach coordinator. It could be a director and producer team. I just spoke with 2 filmmakers today that have had a film on our platform for a couple of months in a small capacity that's doing really well. And the filmmakers, the director and producer, they're doing everything. They composed the film, they wrote it, they directed it, they're running all of the distribution. So it's just the 2 of them. But I think if it was just one, it would be a lot harder. So at least one person on your support team. We do work with distributors, but I would say it's truly the independent entrepreneurial filmmaker and a good teammate that perform best.
I like your phrasing there as like the filmmakers running it as a business. I think is a really important note. We talk a lot about collectively in this kind of room, like passive distribution doesn't work. It needs to be active distribution, and the team members have to be an active participant, and that you need to be on this like a daily focus. So I think for everyone listening in, the platform, any of these platforms won't solve all the problems. It's like you need to be active in that kind of process. So Scott, let's come to you next.
I have to agree with a lot of what Christie has said. The films that work the best have highly emotionally engaged communities. So they could be narrative films, they could be evangelical films, faith-based films, whatever. Documentaries, certainly. Some documentaries get a little tricky because you might have a documentary that requires social workers to really galvanize their communities, and they're working 3 jobs, and their patients are 21 and broke, and so you need something in addition to just a highly emotionally engaged community. You need coalitions with organizations that have the wherewithal, both the capacity, but also sometimes the funding to really make this work. And insofar as the team goes, you need somebody on your team. And I get it, I was a filmmaker, we get really, really exhausted by the time we're done with the film and then the film festival. And it's really easy to just like hand your problem to a distributor and forego all of your rights, by the way, and then not get paid anything in the long tail. But if you want to really drive a double bottom line, especially of impact and revenue, you've got to have someone on your team who recognizes that going to market is not going to the film festival market. It's going to the consumer market. And you need somebody who's known that all along. You need to raise the right amount of capital, not just for production, but for distribution and marketing. Even if you never call it because you sell your film at Sundance, you've got to have that in mind. And if you, the filmmaker, don't have that in mind, certainly one of your equity partners is going to be really happy if you bring a producer on who's got that type of mindset.
I really like that idea of like the go-to-market strategy. Like in any other business sector on the planet, every product has a go-to-market strategy, but for some reason in film, we never talk about that. We're like, make the film, that's what we need to do. So yeah, who's the person on the team that has a go-to-market awareness? And that point of raising capital and raising funding, we recommend to most filmmakers have 10% of your budget in addition. So something to do with marketing distribution. You will need some of that money for something because there are costs of labor of your time and then also of sort of advertising others.
Okay.
Tara, going to you. Oh,
actually, before I'm going to chime in, I actually recommend, am maybe famous for saying 50-50, that 50% of your time, money, and energy should go into making your film and 50% should go into connecting your film to an audience. However, that's hard for most independent filmmakers. So if you can do 20%, 30%, something like that. But if you'll see the studios or even mid companies are doing more in the 50-50 realm, maybe even actually 30-70, with 70 going into marketing. And the other thing I'll just chime in here is that I'm a huge proponent of the producer of marketing and distribution, which is a crew position that I invented specifically for this, so that you have someone helping you with your marketing and distribution. And I will shut up now.
Yeah, good point there. Okay, Tara, what's working best on your platform and what kind of filmmakers?
I think we think about what works best in kind of like a Venn diagram. The film has to be a really good film, and I know everybody who makes films makes wonderful films, but the film has to be great. And when I say great, it doesn't have to be, it has to be a film that people will tell people about and that people feel passionately about. It may not be traditional measures of what you think of as great, but we have to love it, and you have to love it, and audiences, we have to think audiences are going to love it. It's helpful if it then has strong audiences, right? Like, and the difference between a strong audience and maybe one that's more general is like it has an audience of, you know, hockey fans instead of sports fans, right? Like it's got something that makes it that there is some group of people who will, you know, who will be really at the core of the champions for this film. And then we really look for filmmakers who are looking to break the model, and who are really interested and excited to get their films to audiences in new ways. A lot of times, you know, and again, this is, you know, this is all like sort of learning on the job. We just passed our first anniversary, but what we're finding is if you go into it kind of thinking my objective is to reach the most audience possible, this is my goal for the film, or I have this much impact goal and I have this much legislative change goal for this film, I want this film to reach the broadest audience possible. I think looking at the landscape that we're all in, it's likely that path is not a traditional one. And so you know, embracing the fact that is not a traditional one for most films anymore. You know, if you clear that slate, then what does that look like? And that's the kind of filmmaker that I feel like we can collaborate with. And that's kind of the combination of things that we see work really well. It's, you know, it's really almost like thinking about launching your film the way that you would launch something new in the market, a new product, a new service. You know, we use this example a lot, but like, you know, Harry's, you know, came up with the idea for a better razor, and everybody probably would have told them there's a million razors out there. Like, why would you come up with a new one? But it had a value proposition to the people that were going to be passionate about it, you know, that they believed in. And then they had a great marketing plan that went along with it. So that's, you know, we need that level of cooperation and collaboration. And when we have that, I feel like that's that magical kind of combination that can really help maximize the film's potential.
Thanks, Tara. And Iddo, what's working best for you?
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, totally agree with what everyone has said here, you know, and I think we're all sort of looking at that, you know, very similar kinds of experiences. What we've seen is that the filmmaker needs to really keep in mind what is going to drive, you know, a personal decision, you know, whether it's a paid or free screening, right? Because we support, you know, both paid and free events. And what's really interesting is that the, you know, marketing cost of free events is not that different from, you know, the marketing cost of paid events, right? It's not, you know, whether somebody's going to pay $10 or, you know, zero. It's really, are they going to make a decision to devote, you know, 2 hours of their time to this experience? And so it has to be personal, and the filmmaker, you know, and I mean, really for every filmmaker, I think you have to understand the personal reasons that you're making this movie and why it's going to connect with people. You know, back to John's original point, that's, you know, that's got to be a through line of your sort of, you know, filmmaking journey, if you will. And then people, I think, respond well to the opportunity to have a personal experience with the movie. So that's where eventized screenings come in, actually being able to have both these sort of simultaneous viewing events, and then being able to access those later on, but still interact. As Christie said, documentaries tend to do quite well, issue-focused documentaries tend to do quite well, because, you know, people, you know, there's a group of people who feels very personally about these things. We've also had a film that did incredibly well, that was a narrative film, directed by a Tibetan Buddhist Lama, right? So it's a faith-based, but not maybe what we traditionally think of as faith-based filmmaking, but it drew a really, really engaged paying audience around the world. The sort of common factor there actually was social media followers and being able to activate social media followers. I mean, we just cannot discount that, and that's probably the single best predictor of success, both in the paid and free space, and then being able to activate those folks. So, as a film team, that's probably the single best thing that you can do is just to start to build those connections early on, and throughout the journey.
Cool. Great. Thank you. So, all right. So diving into more specifics. So maybe many people perhaps view your platforms as kind of like software as a service. It's essentially, in a sense, passive. It's like I sign up, I use your services. Whatever I do, I add to that. If I don't add to it, I'm not going to get much out of it, that kind of thing. But a number of you have all talked to me over the last year about how you're, engaging in providing or starting to, or at least thinking of and developing marketing support for films that come onto your platform. And so I wanted to ask you, and to me, in a sense, that starts to put you into not a more into a distributor realm. And so I want to ask each one of you, starting with Scott, like what kind of marketing support do you provide to films? And is that and some of you, I think also, do you charge for that support, or is that support that you just provide to the films?
Okay, thank you for the question. And please don't ever call me a distributor, because I think distributors are going the way of the buggy whip. So I'm a tech company, and we have marketing services, though, because it is just essential to market a movie and to bring funding to the marketing. And we can have a whole other conversation about how the Ford Foundation and the half dozen other funders of production budgets, the infrastructure isn't set up yet to provide grants and funding for marketing, because direct to audience wasn't a thing yesterday. And so it's having to catch up. And so although we have this amazing technology, all of us have great technology and great angles, what needs to catch up is the expertise and the funding mechanisms. So that's something we can talk about elsewhere. But let's bifurcate Gathr into the platform itself, which anyone can use. And one of the you're going to ask probably some case studies. I mean, I can tell you how filmmakers have gotten on the platform on a Friday and started selling their TVOD by Friday night. I mean, and we don't even know about it until Saturday. I get notifications. So it's really gratifying that people can come on and intuit how to use it, and if they're great, they can figure it out. But we also can be hired. Our Gathr concierge team can be hired from just the basics of, we'll set up and manage your user profile and field demand and act as your liaison for this. If you were on Airbnb and you're responding to inquiries, it could be the property manager or it could be the homeowner. And we could do that, but we can also run an entire several $100,000 marketing campaign for film, like we're doing with Fox right now, with Ponyboy, which we're releasing traditionally in theaters in June, and then subsequently on through facilitated by the Gathr platform through direct to audience, and then onto their Pay One and EST windows. So we can do the whole gamut. And that's just a conversation we have. I've got some great people we've recently hired at the company, from Neil Williams and Chris Horton, Jeffrey Abramson, all people who spent decades in the business, and so they spearhead various film campaigns. So that in a nutshell.
Right. So just to follow up, that's something that's a fee for service, like you charge for the marketing services, but you
yes, thank you.
Charge for the services.
So to clarify, the platform itself earns money when the film makes money on transaction fees. Separately, the humans are paid as a marketing as fees.
Great. Okay, next up, Christie.
Marketing. Okay. I was like, wait, what was the question again? So marketing.
What kind of
Yes.
what kind of
No, I
marketing
got
support do you provide filmmakers? And I think, yeah, so just start with that.
So I got distracted by the chat. I was listening though. So yes, so we don't do any paid marketing services. So it's interesting. There's no sort of, when you pay to be on the platform, we have a small fee to get on. We do that because we don't want to be a gatekeeper and limit who we can work with, but also need to have some sort of structure in place to have quality control. And we want to make sure that the filmmakers on our site are invested. So the thing we do charge for is that small fee. And we of course can waive it if there's any sort of hardship. But marketing comes internally. So the marketing that we do is primarily through our email list. As new films come on the platform, we look and see, oh, do we have films that were on previously? They're on similar topics, and we have hosts and audiences that might be interested in. And so we do this human curation, and we see what subsections of our email list can we promote these films to, when they're available for transactional VOD, or if there's really cool events on those films, then we'll do promotion to our audiences. And same thing, we'll either go audience wide for big special events, or we'll curate to specific tastes within our email list. We also do some social media. And then in some cases, we will do some marketing support in terms of strategy. So we'll get on the phone. We talk to most of the filmmakers that, at least if you're active on our site, we probably talk to you. And so we'll do a 30-minute strategy call about how to best work with us, and then just some advice that's specific to their film. In some cases, we'll make marketing materials. So we have a standard deck for how to book screenings, and we'll customize it to that film so that they have materials directly from us on how to work with us that they can then use to give to their screening host or promote on their website. And then we give them our contact information so that they're hosts, and they will always have someone that they can reach out to directly. So all that to say, all of our marketing is done internally. We don't really do any sort of external marketing for individual films, and there isn't really an option to pay. We don't offer any additional services.
Great. Okay. Tara.
So we do quite a lot of marketing. I should say, first of all, we do curate the films on the platform, and we only take a select number of films right now for the probably foreseeable future. We're looking at scaling to something like 25 or 30 a year. That's what we're kind of on pace for. So when we look at a film and when we start to think about whether we can support a film, one of the things we're looking at is not only, kind of the things I said before about that Venn diagram of, is it a great film, and does it have a great audience, but can we reach that? And if we were going to reach them, how would we do it? And that, is kind of where the marketing plan begins. I like to say it's like the ingredients of a cake, but in different proportions. So, there's going to be some percentage of that is paid marketing across platforms. Some films will have more of one, more of another, depending on where it works. It's organic marketing, and some of that organic marketing is us. We would love to say that the organic part is 10% us and 90% other people. It's not quite there yet, but what I mean by that is, 10% of that is Jolt's own channels, right? Like, we're using our own social channels, we're using email marketing, we have marketing automation in place as well, so that if someone comes to our page, we can retarget them with the film. If they've expressed an interest in the film, they can follow it. If they buy the film, we'll remind them to finish it, we'll remind them to share it. So there's kind of ongoing communication. We have emails that go out that support each new release and at various points in the film's journey with us. And then we try to create sort of an army of individuals, organizations, partners, for-profits, nonprofits that are aligned to the film in a variety of ways, and get them to almost be the marketers for us. We create all the creative, we do all the video. We probably create in the range of 100 to 300 pieces of unique content over the life cycle of a film. And then we're distributing that to the people that can get it to audiences the most effectively. And what that could look like is, in the instance of, a film like Can't Look Away, which we're supporting right now, it could be that a law firm is really interested in that film, or a legal organization wants lawyers to watch that film. And so we're going to create marketing materials that are going to be more appealing to the legal audience. It's also obviously going to attract parents. And, so we want to tell the parents' stories, and we want to find ways not just for us to tell the story, but for them to tell the story. So we're going to create materials for those parents and for the parents to use through their own foundations, so that we're creating kind of these layers of audience development, and the marketing is going out kind of through those channels in ways that people, can kind of talk about it in their own voice. And then we're constantly recalibrating that across, we're looking at it, we're seeing how it's doing, we're measuring the efficacy, and we're adjusting that based on the audience segments that are doing well. So we're doing at least a weekly adjustment around, and that's why we make more content. It's kind of, if we find out that only parents are interested in this film, which isn't going to be the case, but if it were, we would make 100% more content related to parents and make sure that they had what they needed versus a different audience segment that might be performing differently. So we're always recalibrating that and figuring out how to get that out there.
SS&K?
Yep.
In terms of how the cost, we are including that in our service to be recouped before we do our revenue split with filmmakers. We are now also doing that as a service in some cases for people that, for a variety of reasons, don't want to be on Jolt publicly. So in that case, it can be more of a service. And then that's based on, just kind of a flat rate plus whatever the paid marketing cost would be.
Cool. All right. Last but not least, Iddo.
Thanks, John. And that's super, super interesting to hear how everybody's approaching it. On Eventive, so everyone just sort of included, once you're hosting your own screenings on the platform, has the option to check a box for public promotion. And one surprisingly effective, or maybe not surprisingly effective, tool that we offer everybody is that if you're publicly promoting, then any screenings that are publicly available are now visible on Letterboxd, right? So Letterboxd has got the sort of, streaming services box. And so especially for early release films or that aren't available anywhere else, or actually it's been like really, really effective for international titles that are hard to find but have a following. That little Letterboxd, stream on Eventive click is really powerful, and that's just free and included. Also, for folks who choose to promote, films then are visible on the Eventive Discovery portal, which is both the, when you go to eventive.com or watch.eventive.org, those are screenings, the online screenings that are publicly visible. And those are sort of automatically ranked for visibility by viewership. So we've seen some effect there again, although most folks are getting to screenings directly from links. And so to activate and mobilize this audience that we've talked about, we brought a data scientist on board and started looking at how can, without just emailing folks directly, which we've actually found is it hasn't been effective with the folks that we've been talking to, or audiences that we've been talking to. So we've been able to use large language models, basically working with the descriptions of films to create lookalike audiences through Meta to really start to supercharge new audience development, especially when it's done in sync with existing kind of social followings that films have. So that is, we are currently providing that service basically at cost. And we've gotten to the point where we can predict, pretty well what the cost per conversion is going to be around various kinds of price points. So, some folks have invested $500 or $1,000, and that's just spending that goes directly to Meta. Depends on the title, whether Instagram or Facebook is more effective. But that's been a pretty popular tool for folks, and now we're looking at adding additional paid media, paid platforms to the offering.
Okay. All right. So Sarah, we're going to talk a little bit more about data.
My favorite topic, guys. You all know this, all four of you. So data obsessed, it's really important. So I wanted to get a sense from all of you of one of the main reasons people might be thinking about direct to consumer, direct to audience, kind of direct distribution, is that you have more information than if you just put your film on iTunes, put your film on Amazon, on those platforms. So we had some questions before the session from people writing in like, what's the difference between you and just a regular aggregator? And the biggest one really that most of you talk about to me frequently is the access to data that you have because it's first party with the audience. So I'd love to hear a little bit from each of you as to what are some of those data points that you can access kind of as the user on your platform. Let's think about revenue data, audience data, hit rates on your kind of website for kind of viewing data, has someone watched the film or not? So what are those data points that people can access in your back end? How easy is it for them to access that data? Do you have an API to go to other places to access the data? So what is that information? Because that for me, when I think about the opportunities in this current landscape, that's the benefit of using these systems for all of you. It's like I can actually get information I can never get working with the kind of larger platforms, but you all approach data in different ways. So I'd love you to kind of just articulate a little bit about how you each do that. I'm going to start with Tara for this one. So what's the data you're sharing and how and what is it that we can see?
All right, now everyone else on the panel can take a nap. They're going to have heard this 50 times. So obviously the core of our business is data. I mentioned that at the beginning. I think we're best described as data obsessed. We have, as I mentioned, probably, in the range of 500 million data points that are constantly feeding a machine learning algorithm that is looking at, taking a film, looking at other films, kind of saying, okay, this film is in the range of this film. These are the likely audience types for that film, and these are the best ways to reach that audience. So in terms of the type of data that we have that achieve that, first of all, when we talk about audiences, we're not talking about demographics. We do have demographic data, but we're not talking about demographics. We're talking more about motivation. And this is work that, we kind of started at Sundance with the first virtual festival. It was kind of a concept then to say like, oh, we could see who's doing what and, really begin to start understanding, what motivates people to watch films. And when I say motivate, I mean, like, if somebody favorites a film and they come to every QA and they watch the film beginning to end and they gift it on our site to 5 of their friends and they share it on social media, we know something about that person. We know, that they are probably the most, they're the most interested in this topic of anybody. If somebody doesn't come to our site to watch the film until an influencer tells them to do it, then we might know something about that person. If we, if they have to read a review first before they take action, then we know something about that person. So a lot of our data is coming together. It starts with behavior, and we track everything anonymously and we store it safely. Just to say that. And the data, and also our algorithm is built by a team that I like to say looks like society instead of, a bunch of young engineers. It's actually a very diverse team of people that are thinking about who the people are that might actually watch these films. But we track everything from where they came from, what brought them to us, what content got them there, how long did they engage with that content, what platform did they engage with it on, did they come to our page, did they, where did they go next, did they make an account, did they buy a ticket, did they share it, did they gift it, did they open an email, and all of that's kind of coming together to kind of form a picture. In terms of what we then can share back with the filmmakers, it's a lot of that. We have like how the film is doing, how it's doing across social media, but also there is more of that trends over time, or, some of the interesting stuff starts to happen with when you've been running a marketing campaign and then you suddenly see that, word of mouth has overtaken marketing. Like now it's like in the zeitgeist, and that's what we're trying to make happen for every film. And it's thrilling when it happens. And so, but we can actually, we share those kinds of graphs and charts with filmmakers on a real-time dashboard. We're also able to share personally identifiable data where someone has given us permission to do so. So if they have said, yes, it's okay for you to give my email address or my information to the filmmaker for them to follow up with me afterwards, then we're able to do that as well. And then the last thing I just want to say is as recently as a month ago, since you mentioned aggregators, I mentioned that we're taking films kind of all the way across this life cycle. We are actually now able to serve as an aggregator for films. And what we're hoping is that the data that we have can continue to serve the film, even if it's off of our platform. We won't be able to measure quite as much because now we can't see the round trip, but we should be able to serve marketing on those platforms that would be informed by the data that we gathered while they were on our platform and how the marketing performed. So.
Great, thanks, Sarah. Just to uplift what you just mentioned there, which was commented in the chat as well, this idea of like marketing attrition, like actually knowing like, is the influencer working? Is the email marketing working? I think you all have different versions of that, which is really useful. And from a kind of just marketeer's brain, like we all need that. It's very, very important to have that information. Okay,
can I say one last thing?
Yeah.
Just because Iddo mentioned this before too. I just feel like I need to get this point across too. Like you have to think about marketing and data as conducting an orchestra as well. Like it's great if you have some celebrity who wants to post about your film, fantastic. Do not have them post at like 8 a.m. on a Wednesday. Like you really need to think about what are they going to say? What is the format of what they're going to say? When are they going to say it? Like really think about like, how do you get the most, the most bang for your buck with the marketing resources you have. And then ideally you'd be able to track and measure how that did.
Yeah. Track and measure. Very key. Coming to Scott next.
I'm writing a P&A budget for, is that Christine? For Christine. Question again? What was the question?
What are the data points that you can, as a user, you can access on your site to inform your back?
Right. So the data points start with the email addresses for retargeting. It's you get 2 bites of the apple. When you control the transactional paywall, whether it's for theatrical or non-theatrical or virtual ticketing, or whether it's for transactional video on demand, you get the email addresses, you get the IP locations of where people are. And when you get the data, you can hand the empirical audience data to your digital marketing team. And so then you can create the lookalike campaign that Iddo was talking about, and you can service ads to people who look like that. And through this lever over here, cost per million, CPM, you can drive digital ads right into the own funnel that you control, your transactional paywall. So you have 2 levers. You have CPM and you have retail price. And when you can figure those 2 things out and drive a flywheel of digital ads into your transactional paywall, and then reinvest the revenues because you're not waiting behind an aggregator or distributor for a month plus 30 days to get paid nothing with no data. You're actually getting paid within 7 days for Gathr. You can reinvest that in your digital marketing ads and keep that flywheel going. Also, if you're driving a double bottom line of impact, you can send an email that you can time for the moment the end credits roll. You can send an email to somebody with a director's statement with a call to action and see a 40-45% click-through rate to whatever action you're trying to drive. And not only that, you can re-engage to drive and measure the impact, the actual outcomes. So why does participant go away? I mean, because at the end of the day, they were a great brand, but they had no measurable data. I mean, how are you supposed to go back to, Picture Motion? Love you guys to death. But you're making really nice PDFs for your brand partners, showing them how many free screenings you gave away, but you can't actually tell people what type of impact that you're driving, unless, of course, it's invisible war.
We get that from surveys. Yeah, that comes from the surveys.
So you're showing invisible war to Leon Panetta, and he's taking sexual abuse claims out of chain of command. That's amazing. Or if Blackfish, just by sheer force, has enough people watching to stop going to SeaWorld. But between those 2 gates, if you don't have the data, you're not driving and measuring impact. And so that's the data comes from the transactional paywall. Ever since we removed the barrier, which are the ticketing middlemen, from this equation, we can claw back consumer data insights that have been lost through the disintermediation going all the way back to Paramount consent decrees that broke up the exhibitors and the studios. And that's fundamentally why marketing has been so frigging expensive. Even Superman 2, you start from zero. The DVDs, the TVOD, you start from zero because you have no audience data. So you have more data than Warner Brothers. I mean, now they're all buying the ticketing platforms, but that's why the data is so critical. And we give all of the data to the filmmakers and to the art houses, to the theaters as well. Because again, we're a white label platform, and it's yours. You're just using us as a utility.
I think the point you're making there around the distance, especially with theatrical ticketing, is a massive one. Like, for so long, distributors and filmmakers had no access to the information of who was buying a ticket in theaters, and that's like a crucial problem. I will though flag though, firms like Picture Motion and Together and every other impact person on the planet definitely has impact measurement and sort of first point of audience kind of feedback in their business models. I think this is a very important note to flag. And that there's a variety of data collection points that in the impact community we've all been using for over a decade, just to make sure that's a really good point.
Just in the spirit of being provocative and mixing this up a little bit. Just wanted to push some needles.
It's you can make some comments, but yeah, for every impact producer in the chat, many a survey monkey, many a data form has been given out over decades, and many data points we've all been collecting in many different ways. Christie, coming to you about Kinema, what is the data points that you're sharing, and what can we get from your platform?
Sure. So we look at data in a similar way you do. We kind of see it at 3 levels. We see revenue data, user data, and viewing data. And for us, those are in that order. That's where we're strongest. So we built the system prioritizing revenue. So we want you to get paid out immediately. So we built the system on Stripe, secure platform. You have a dashboard where you can see in real time your event bookings coming through and your TVOD transactions as they're happening, what your portion is, and it gets paid out every Monday for events because we wait till the event passes and is over to release those funds to you. And for your transactional VOD, it's in real time. You can go into your settings on Stripe and change it to weekly or monthly if you don't want like a billion little transactions in your bank statement. So primarily revenue transparency and happening immediately. You can export it to a spreadsheet to send to your financial people. Second is user data. For us, that's hosts and audiences. So again, emails, I think we've all recognized emails are important. It's how you're building your audience. I think we at Kinema and many here don't want anyone to become platform dependent. And so we look at, what I mean by that is if you're relying on a YouTube or social media, you can't take that audience with you. You don't have their email addresses. So it's really important for us to make that as an option. We, of course, have to abide by all the rules. If someone says they don't want to hear from you, they're going to unsubscribe. You can't contact them. There are rules we got to follow. So email data and host data. So you can see who's booked a screening of your film, where they booked it, the address, all that location info. Right now, we're a little bit late on the demographic info for your users. We can produce a report from the last 30 days for anyone that requests. We're trying to find a better, more affordable way to incorporate that into your dashboard so that you get that in real time in a way that doesn't increase cost for us or to pass on to the filmmakers. And then viewing data. So we can also produce that manually of how many people came to your screening. You can see in your dashboard every event, the total number of people who RSVP'd or what the licensing fee is for if it's an in-person event for a range of people, how many people RSVP'd, and then we can tell you afterwards how many people showed up for virtual events. So we'll pull that manually for now. In the future, again, we want to make that easier for you to see in real time, but also I think it's probably similar to people here. We prioritize different product features based on the requests we're getting. So there are other features that we want to develop in the reporting system that are actually outside of this that we think are going to be more useful to be helpful with that flywheel everyone's talking about. That if you promote your page on Kinema and other places, and then they come to the site, did that end in a transaction? And how can you better track that so you can improve your advertising? And the last bit I'll say is the way we look at our platform, you have your own individual pages. You control that information. You control your pricing. We have customizable rate cards and ticketing and everything. So it is your independent space that can be public or private, but you're participating in an ecosystem. And we want so that you can be public on the homepage. We know that we can promote you. And again, that's part of the capacity building piece of this. So it's your own space, but also you're part of a community. And what we care about also is why we curate on some level is we want people to be proud to be on Kinema. I saw someone post in here about like how do you prioritize so people don't feel like self-distribution is the last option. We want the experience to be cinematic. We want this to be in the storytelling space. So as you're running these campaigns and as we're helping alongside, you feel like you are still doing proper distribution. Your film is getting proper distribution. Okay, that's my last piece. I'll put that in a PDF for you.
Don't call it self-distribution. All of you are doing proper distribution. It's all direct distribution or hybrid distribution. It's not self-distribution. I wrote a pretty scathing piece about that. So, but please, let's stop calling it and differentiating between self-distribution and proper distribution. Sorry to call you out on that, Christie, but I know it's just something that we got to get out of our.
No, it is.
I even say it sometimes, but I catch myself and, stop myself. So yeah. Anyway, go on, Sarah.
Right. And then Iddo, over to you, and one of those points that Christie just mentioned around the viewer data. That is something that Eventive has. So talk us a little bit more about any other additional kind of reporting features that you have that maybe differentiate you from the others at the moment.
Yeah, great, thank you. And John, just to sort of piggyback on what you said, and I think this is the part of this answer. The information that you have access to through an Eventive dashboard actually is a lot better than many of the distributors than that we have worked with and connected with have access to through the tools that they're using, right? So what we do is every organizer, filmmaker, whoever is putting events together gets access to their own Eventive dashboard that has all the information on it that the Eventive team has access to as well. It's complete transparency of that information. And the terms of service that the ticket buyers accept make you, the event organizer, also basically first party, right? Like they've accepted already that this data is shared with event organizers, so you have direct access to, as you said, Sarah, not only the email addresses, but also pretty detailed, pretty granular streaming analytics, meaning when do people start watching, when they stop watching, how much did they watch, what devices were they watching, all these kinds of data points. The other thing that I think is really, really important and helps to complete the demographic picture is in the dashboard, drop it. It's just a single sort of checkbox drop in, Metapixel, a Google Tag Manager ID, and have all of this audience data just automatically flow through to those dashboards as well, which gives you much more granular demographics. Location data, there's actually, I don't want to take too much time, but there's a case study on the website, and I know John and team are going to be sharing these resources later, but for a movie called 1946, The Mistranslation That Shifted Culture. And what was so cool about what they did is they just sort of grabbed their audience location data and used that, the streaming audience location data, and used that to plot out a roadshow and theatrical bookings in places where they had really nice audience clusters. So that was just really easy to access.
Yeah. That kind of information as well was widely used in the music industry about a decade ago when music streaming first started. So we're sort of like 10 years away from what the music industry did really, really well. But a friend of mine from London launched a platform where he looked at the streaming data for musicians and then booked gig tours in music venues based off that and had the highest return ever. And then it got bought by a massive music studio. So it's like that direct audience location data, super, super helpful of where people are watching. Okay, John, let's go on to what's working best case.
Yes. All right, so each of you talk it's already 3. So each of you talk very pithily about a film. So I'm going to ask each of you 2 questions now because these were separate questions. A film that you felt that did well on the platform, and what were their specific tactics that you thought or attributes that caused that film to do well? And secondly, we all believe in unicorns, right? So, or we maybe believe in unicorns, but not every film's a unicorn, like a good performer. I'd like to really get a sense of the averages of performances on your platforms. Let's see. I'm gonna start with Christie on this one.
Sure. So I was just thinking because there was a few. The one I actually want to talk about it's these two filmmakers I spoke with today. And when we have films that do well, we do try and interview them and put them on our YouTube page so we can ask a lot of these questions and pull out of them. I can't, it's like all these films. The hard part is I can't share all the financial data. But I will say this film, which has, let's put them in the under $15,000 category. They've been on for 4 months. They're only using TVOD. They're widely available everywhere. And they're in the under $15,000 category. We have films I'd say on average are going to be more in the kind of 20 to 30,000. Like that's pretty okay. That's done pretty well. The unicorns for us are like the over 200K, one of which is the film that, no, sorry, you were I think over 100K, Sarah, the film we worked on with you. So you have two over 200K. And they're the outliers partially because they did something that was very, very topical. So they're the unicorns and the outliers are tapping into something that's happening kind of globally or zeitgeisty. So kind of talk about this first one, and as well as all the others below that, they follow the same few things. Besides being the entrepreneurial filmmaker and having a team member, they follow the rules that we all know here. They have a very clear goal. They pick one of those 4 goals that Jon talks about all the time: is it revenue, impact, career, audience, and they really stick with it. They come up with a strong windowing strategy. For windowing, it's just figuring out where to release your film in a way to maximize revenue and limit exposure. So you're in theaters for a limited amount of time. You do in-person screenings for a limited amount of time. You do a premium VOD window. And so they're very thoughtful about how to do that. And they do it in a way that matches their audience. They really, really know who their specific audience is. And so they hone in on that. They find where that audience is online. And to reach them, they do it through social media, small paid advertising, and really big into partnerships for the organizations, the publications, the influencers that reach those audiences that they're trying to reach, and do a deal with them that's not necessarily a paid deal. It could be hosting a screening. It could be going on their TikTok. It could be a brand showing it at their offices. And so I found with all the films that have done well, even if small capacity, have followed those specific rules. I don't know if I'm dodging the question by not going into one film, but if I can't share like a film's finances, it's really, I don't know if it'll matter as much to go on a deep dive into their strategy.
Yeah, no, I think that was great. And I think it's great how you kind of like segmented this kind of performance from outliers, and really were specific on tactics. So I actually do want to hear that from the other panelists, like what kind of areas, like what kind of the different areas, if you have it, or at least the average, and then like what really contributes to people performing well. So I'm going to go to Iddo next.
Thank you. Yeah, and actually, so there's one title that we can share financials on, and that is the one that I mentioned, and the case studies on the Eventive website, maybe one.
And I'll just chime in. We're doing a live case study with that filmmaker and that film on May 29th. So,
oh, that's great. Yeah. So it's called 1946, The Mistranslation That Shifted Culture. Rocky Roggio is the filmmaker. And it had a pretty and it's a terrific movie. It's about specifically about how the word homosexual was put into the Bible by a 1946 translation committee at Yale Divinity School. So it seems like kind of an obscure topic, but it's something that people were very, very passionate about. And so they had I think they premiered at Doc NYC, had a pretty nice festival run, actually streamed at a number of festivals on Eventive, and we could see had, really great streaming uptake at the festivals to begin with, and then came on board the platform. They tried a four-wall theatrical run in London, basically, even though they're Americans. That was what seemed like to them like the place to start. And everyone should come and listen to Rocky on May 29th. But by basically mobilizing Instagram followers that had sort of developed through the festival run, and also community partnerships, right? And this was basically LGBTQ friendly church groups and family groups, PFLAG and so on. So again, folks who are really going to be passionate about the particular subject matter. They were able to get, and this was all paid attendance, so 10,000 plus tickets, 130,000 in net sales. That's funds to them after Eventive fees were collected, and that, again, on average, it works out to about 80, keeping about 80% of the gross revenue, depending on your ticket price, because our fee structure is fixed. But did really, really well, and then converted that to a road show where they were able to reach significantly large audiences. So that kind of 10,000 plus attendance is an outlier. Five or six direct distribution titles that have done that. Although in other areas of the platform, for instance, ARP hosts screenings with us that a single screening routinely draws more folks than that. There's kind of a cluster of folks that are selling around 1,000 tickets, bringing in $15,000 to $20,000 of revenue, and I think that is, again, just sort of activating social followers and/or investing a little bit in this enhanced marketing product and tooling that we were talking about. And then I think the sort of typical outcome, the sort of typical outcome is, there are a lot of films that come on, have got sort of a core interest group, and probably issue about 300 or so tickets total. So again, $6,000 in revenue, in net revenue.
Cool. All right, Scott.
Well, there are myriad ways of approaching this answer. And I think I would underscore it by the financial success of the film is a function of the film's community. If you've got a history of hula dancing documentary, you've got a Hawaiian native and expat community, and you've got dance schools. And so if you're doing $75,000, that is a grand slam home run. And if you have union, and you've got all the labor unions in the country, you're probably not feeling very successful if you're not grossing many hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I just want to put that out there. Also, since we handle theatrical, I want to say something in the theatrical world, and then also go to the TVOD. And then there's also, by the way, do you have a budget, or are you just leveraging your relationships? A great successful case study we had was with a film we did with Kino Lorber called Walk With Me several years ago. That was a Benedict Cumberbatch narrated film about the Vietnamese monk Thich Nhat Hanh. There's 600 temples in the United States. So one webinar later, describing to the social activities committee chair people at these temples how you can screen the film in a theater near you, getting half of those temples at 120 people at an $18 ticket. That was about a $650,000 gross, just leveraging that one connection. So again, it's a function of the alliances and the organizations that you have, partnering with brands, influencers, and organizations that have relationships, trusted relationships with their own communities. And so it might not cost a lot of money. On the other hand, we worked with Roadside Attractions earlier this year on their film City of Dreams, and they stroked a several $100,000 donation in the Gathr Foundation, which we used to subsidize tickets to a nationwide theatrical premiere. We set up about 168 locations around the country in the top 32 markets, and they were able to use iHeartRadio, VetTix, group sales to drive redemptions of these tickets that were underwritten by a donation that the equity partner had made. So this used traditional marketing efforts, but it was another $220,000 boost to the reportable gross box office. The unused funds went back to the donor. We got all the data to boot, and this was 75% of their opening night and 18% of their opening weekend. So these are ways you can spend money to earn revenue, or you can spend sweat equity to earn revenue. More recently, No Other Land is using Gathr for a 3-week exclusive transactional video on demand fundraiser. And as you can imagine, that's doing very well. I can't say how well because it's ongoing, but that's you would expect that their expectations are much higher than a different film. And then lastly, going back to Union, here's a film that had a tremendous union support. And I think that is a great example of something that did enormously well. It probably, I think they have a distribution advocates case study, so I don't think they would mind me saying it. It was in high 5 figures what they did, but I also think it could have done much better had they been able to much more effectively leverage their unions. I mean, the United Auto Workers are several million people. Had they been able to get any one of these major unions, and they still can. I mean, there's still, this is ongoing. What's wonderful about this is it's all evergreen. But with the timing of the election, with labor unions, and we saw this with No One Asked You, which I know went over to Jolt. They're trying to get in front of Planned Parenthood. This is right before the election. They're in battleground states, and the organizations might have the willingness to do it, but the timing might be completely wrong, and they might have other initiatives. So I could keep going on and on and on, but I just want to underscore, you've got to compare your potential success to the size of your budget and the size of your community, not necessarily to other films.
Good point. Yeah, great. Tara, and then so I realized that it's 3:13. We haven't gotten to a lot of or any audience questions. Our apologies. So what I'm going to do, just as a heads up, is I'm going to take the audience questions as best as I can. I'm going to add the ones that I feel can fit into the grid, and then I'm going to send the grid back to each of the platforms to fill those out so that we get, and even some of them that don't really feel right for a grid, but I'm going to have ask each of the platforms to answer those questions. Not too many, like I don't want to, make too much hours and hours of homework, but at least to kind of help answer a lot of the questions that have popped up in the Q&A. So, all right. So, Tara.
Great. And I don't think my answers are going to be wildly different than what we've heard. So I want to say something else, if that's okay. I mean, asking us this question is a good question for all of us, but it's almost like, I'm not saying it's the wrong question. I guess my question back would be, what are the alternatives, right? Like, I've spent a year looking at filmmakers coming to us with terrible deals, right? Like terrible deals from streamers, terrible deals from other partners, some with no money at all, right? We've talked to people who have had films that are sitting on, they've gone off to an aggregator, they've gone off on all the platforms, and the contracts that I've seen, contracts where there's zero money exchanged with a 5-year commitment of rights, with an expectation of $60,000 to $150,000 tops, right, over 5 years. And that's what's being offered to filmmakers for them to have the ability to go out and say, I sold my film, right? Like, so, and people haven't been real about this for a really, really long time. So we're on the tail end of it to some degree. And, but what I want to raise is like, are you better off doing that? Or are you better off like doing this? Are you better off building your audience, saving some money for some marketing, saving money for distribution, retaining your rights, retaining your artistic integrity, and knowing that your film's not going to go get buried somewhere, that no one's ever going to see it again. Every single person on this panel is going to turn over every rock. They're going to do absolutely everything to get your film to audiences because we love this, and because we love film, and because we love what it does for the culture. So like, I'm going to answer the question, but I just kind of want to answer it with like, we're here because we love film and we don't want it to die. And we're sitting in a world like where every day, like you read the news and, the 60 Minutes producer is resigning over censorship. And, we're seeing it across Meta, suppression of ads that relate to anything political. And it's horrible. and we're here to do absolutely everything we can to change it. So just saying. That's my like little speech.
Very great.
And you know, and none of us think this is easy. And this is not easy for filmmakers. It's not easy for us. It's, you know, so I'm just putting that out there. So like, you know, what is a good, what's possible? We're focusing right now on films that if we have global rights, if we have the Venn diagram, if we have enough runway, if we have the right audience, we think we can get into that like 100,000 plus size audience. I think that for most films, it's probably sitting somewhere between 10 and maybe 50, and that's realistic, you know? So that's what I think. And, you know, and then the revenue that flows out of that, the other thing I'll say is, you know, with the intention to do good, we're in a world where, you know, we've trained audiences to think that they can get this content for free. And to some extent that has commoditized the offering. Like if I can watch this free here tomorrow and I can watch 5 more films free the next day, then like, what do I value and how do I know how to value films? So I would also say, like, you know, for all of us collectively, like, let's think about the value of the films too. And let's think about that when we price them. And let's think about that, you know, at every stage of the journey, and maybe not underwrite them quite so much, quite so early, so that everybody understands that like, actually, these are really important. So.
Yeah. So thank you, Tara. I'm gonna, the one thing I'll say about the free aspect is that I don't think we've trained audiences that way. I think tech platforms have done that. And I think there's this notion that information wants to be free, which the kind of hippie tech founders in the beginning was kind of like an anti-censorship call. And that became then information needs to be free, meaning that everyone needs to give away their content to people, which has began the difficulty for content creators. Although there's alternatives to that, et cetera. But I think that it's not us as a community. I think there's certain economic forces that I would say that have caused these issues. Anyway, just to throw in my little, you know, political, you know, borderline political banter there.
For sure. So. It's very complex. I'm just saying it's very tempting. Even we think it's tempting, right? We get to a point where we're like, should we lower the price? Should we lower it more? You know, I'm just, you know, like it's because you want people to see the film and you don't want to stop it, you know?
Yeah, that people need to value content. Sorry, go ahead, Iddo.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And Tara, to your point, you know, just sort of adding value to the content. I think in a way the key becomes being able to offer differentiated experiences and sort of different things happening at different times. So, you know, maybe a film is available for viewing for free at a certain time, but you pay extra for an eventized screening with a Q&A with director or talent or whatever, right? You know, just something that sort of gets people in the door, because ultimately we're still sort of, you know, to get to that you know 100,000 viewers point, that's the sort of question of fame, right? Things have to become famous, and for them to become famous, they have to be seen, and sometimes to be seen, they have to be offered at you know no cost initially. So being able to offer differentiated experiences is key. And you know, just going back to the question about deals, I mean, the one reason that I'm doing this is I worked as a filmmaker for a long time. I made a living in commercial production and put the money into independent films, and the deals have been terrible for a long time. I mean, you know, certainly since 2010, and some, you know, very, very highly regarded films that were very widely seen that, you know, there's not any money on the back end, right? So I think for all of us, this sort of common purpose of trying to develop a sustainable ecosystem around telling these stories, right? It's like money has to come in somewhere in order for people to get paid somehow to keep doing this work. So we're definitely all united on that.
I
I
think
think
it's
on
for
that
we'll say real quick, the screenings too. I think most everyone does this here in a sense. It's the hosted screenings. If you go to our site and you click the free button, you can find free, but it's not free for the filmmakers. Like they were paid. They were paid a licensing fee. So I think it's to Iddo's point, finding creative ways to do both things. And I see in the chat, find an avenue for free for some audiences while also ensuring creatives get paid.
Yeah, that point of accessibility is so crucial. There are some audiences just from their circumstance who wouldn't ever be able to have the capacity to pay. But to Christie's point on that licensing revenue, you want to make sure that you as a film team is getting a license on behalf of that group. So whether it's a buyout license for 100 cinemas or a buyout license for one community group, someone has covered the fee to the filmmaker, even if the end user is free to them. And making that really clear in the communication, I think, is a key thing. So I want to close us out because we are running out of time. But I think the most important thing for filmmakers to kind of end with is just like, how do they get on your platform? So we can just end really quickly with how do you get on your platforms and what is any initial onboarding fees? The grid will have your revenue splits, but if somebody wanted to sign up like straight after this call, what is the process? How do they get on? How quickly does that happen? And are there any costs up front they need to think about for the platform, plus whatever their actual kind of marketing costs are? So let's start with Iddo for that one.
Thanks, Sarah. And Dave, my colleague, actually just posted the link. So click on that link and pay $299 for the single film activation. And we'll just take a look and make sure that it's real. And then you'll have a dashboard and you can ingest your film and you can be showing it, today or tomorrow, depending on what time of day it comes in. But it's just dive in and get started, and then you can build from there. And we tell folks all the time, think about it as an iterative process. I mean, it's great to plan ahead and have it all worked out. It's also really good to be able to respond to changing circumstances and develop from there. But yeah, just click on that link.
Great. Scott?
It is totally free to create a user account and to add the film. We make it really easy. We've API'd with the online movie database, so you should be able to just type in your film title, all the metadata comes up. Then instead of adding your cast and crew, you actually invite your cast and crew to create talent profiles so that they can be booked for post-screening panel discussions. They field and manage their own demand. That's not an operational burden on you. And then you can enable TVOD, partner TVOD, theatrical, set your fees. The thing that takes the longest is thinking about, what am I going to sell this thing for? What are my on sale and off sale dates? It's not the onboarding itself. It's just thinking through the business logic of what your film is doing. But if you knew all of that, you could have the film set up in half an hour and you could be selling it thereafter.
Great. Thanks. Tara?
For us, I posted the link in the chat, but the first place to start is just to fill out a form, tell us about your film, tell us about, what your goals are. I will say we're really only looking at films that have global rights available and ideally have not been on any other platforms yet. We do ask for exclusivity for a period of time. And yeah. So those are the starting points. So please just drop us your film and we'll start a conversation.
And as you have curation built into yours, Tara, unlike the others,
Yeah.
long should filmmakers allow for that decision as to whether or not you want to onboard the film?
It varies. I
Come on,
mean,
Tara.
it can go, look, some conversations take like 10 months, but it's not really us. We're like, we want your film. I think it's usually a couple of months. It's not going to be like you want your film on there tomorrow. And even if you did want your film on there tomorrow, we need 3 months, most likely, unless you've done absolutely all the audience building up front. Then we need 2 months, but we need 3 months to really build a plan with people.
Cool. Thanks, Sarah. And then Christie?
Yep. You can go to kinema.com/filmmakers. I put the link in there. You can get started immediately. If you pay for the year upfront, it breaks down to $22.50 a month or $270 for the year, or you can do monthly. We have some people who come on just to do like one big live event and then come off. So you can do that. Once you upload your film, we require 48 hours to review the film to make sure it meets our content standards and community guidelines. And then we'll get back to you. And we highly recommend that once you've done that and your film's approved, ping us. like you'll get a welcome email from us, but reach out. We've actually found that it's better to talk early before you launch your film about the right strategy. So just reach out to set up a 30-minute phone call. We've tried reaching out, but sometimes there's delay. So when you're ready, reach out to us.
Cool.
Great. Thanks. Well, I think that difference between curation and sort of native onboarding is a really important distinction for filmmakers. So just building in time, if Jolt is the one that you're interested in working with, just have that time. And the idea of also, yeah, community guidelines and content advisory, just want to make sure we've got the right films out in the world, kind of in that way across the different platforms. Okay, Jon, shall we wrap it
All
up?
right. Wrap it up. So, well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sarah, Iddo, Christie, Scott, Tara, for being so generous with your time. Really appreciate it. And I also just want to thank all of you who came. And the chat's been crazy. Like, thank you for all your participation. We're going to try to incorporate as much as I'm going to try to figure out how to incorporate a lot of the chat into the deliverables for next week. I have some ideas for that already, but the chat's been great. Your participation, the community is great. One little shout out. I'm going to make a shout out for the Future Film Coalition that you can read about in my Substack. That if you're concerned about the systemic issues that we're dealing with, I would feel free to check that out. Check out futurefilmcoalition.org on Substack.